One of my favorite dinner party treats to make is lasagna, but assembling lasagna, well, that can take an awfully long time if you're doing everything from scratch. So what I like to do is use some great supermarket shortcuts that really speed this process along. Once you learn these shortcuts, you can probably put this lasagna together in about 30 minutes. Now, it all begins with a really easy shortcut. You buy frozen or fresh meatballs at the supermarket, and if they're frozen, let them thaw. Then crumble them up and get them into a bowl. To that, you're going to add your favorite jarred marinara sauce. Now, everybody has a favorite that they love. If you tend to make your own sauce, that's great too. Some people put sauce away, and you can certainly do that. But I find that if I'm in a hurry, I'll buy several jars of sauce from the market, give this a stir, and now I've got instant meat sauce. Now, really the only thing that we're going to work with assembling is the ricotta mixture, and this is super easy. Now, what I like to do is let my ricotta come a bit to room temperature. That way it stirs a little more easily, it's a little softer and easier to work with. Now, to that, we're going to add some shredded mozzarella cheese and get that into the ricotta and give this a little stir first. Now, we're gonna add some other things, but I like to work this in first because it's good to get all that worked into the ricotta. Now, notice I've not added any salt to this because we're about to add some Parmesan cheese. Now, Parmesan cheese has a fair amount of salt content. It's gonna add a little bit of a bite and a little bit of a zip to this ricotta mixture. So in goes the Parmesan. Now, you want to be able to bind this mixture together a bit, and that's where your beaten egg comes in. I'm going to add that into our bowl. And before I do my last stir, some Italian seasoning from your spice cabinet, and a generous amount of black pepper. Perfect. Now, all this goes in. I like to fold this in on itself, working that egg mixture all the way through. I find that dry spices are great, and when you mix them with the right wet ingredients, it wakes them up and really allows the flavors to bloom. Now it's time to put the lasagna together. Now, the first step we're going to do is take our 9x13, and we're going to take a spoonful of our meat sauce and just scatter that on the bottom of the pan. Now, the best part about this recipe is you don't have to be terribly precise, because with lasagna, particularly when you're layering, it all kind of evens out and cooks and spreads out into the nooks and crannies of the pan. So there's not really any need to get super, super fancy or very neat. Now, once we get all that together, the first step of these no-boil lasagna noodles go in. Best invention ever. And this, again, just side by side into the pan. Now we're going to layer in our ricotta mixture. Now, this is going to be a sticky mixture. You want to use your two best tools. What do I always say? The two best tools in the kitchen are attached to your wrist, your hands. So once you dollop a little bit of this mixture in there, just spread it out as best you can with your fingers. Then we're going to go in with the next layer. All right. So a little bit of this goes here, 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 and here. Really delicious and delightful. Get in here and give that just a little bit of a smear. And work it around. Remember, this ricotta is all going to melt and even out when it starts to cook, so there's really no need to get super precise with it. Now comes more cheese. Generous amounts of shredded mozz on top here. Gonna make this even nicer. And then top it with a little grated fresh Parmesan. So now that this is all assembled, we're going to cover it with some aluminum foil, preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and pop it inside for about 25 to 30 minutes. And then when it comes out of the oven, we'll tell you what happens next. So our lasagna has been in the oven for an hour, smelling amazing. Let's get this out of the oven. Little hip action. And get this right over to the cutting board so it can cool. Now let me give you a little tip. Don't cut your lasagna when it comes right out of the oven, because you're going to end up with lasagna all over the plate. It tends to run. What you want to do with lasagna, much the way you do with meat, let it rest. Let it really absorb all those juices. Let all those noodles kind of pull some of the juices back in. If you want to make sure it stays nice and warm, cover it with some aluminum foil. Once it has set up, then cut it into squares. And remember, I also love to have a little extra warmed sauce on hand in case your guests want to ladle that over top. Of course, a little extra Parmesan cheese never hurt either. So when it's all said and done, everyone gathers around the table and it's time to mangia. Enjoy meatball lasagna.